Have you ever looked at a world map and wondered, why do the continents fit together like puzzle pieces? Africa and South America, like two torn sheets of paper, seem to slot perfectly back together. I used to think it was just a coincidence. But then I read a quote from Alfred Wegener, the man who changed how we understand our planet. The continents are not fixed, they drift, like giant ships on the ocean of time. I'm a geologist, having spent over 3 decades studying the mysteries of this planet. But the deeper I dig, the more I uncover a great injustice. Alfred Wegener, the man who laid the foundation for modern Earth science, was mocked and ignored by his own time. His continental drift theory, the idea that continents move, was once called fantastical. He died alone, doubted, and today his name is little more than a footnote in textbooks. We live on a planet where every mountain, every ocean, bears the mark of Wegener's ideas. So why have we forgotten him? Why was a genius, who saw the truth before the world did, cast into the shadows? Today, we're here to explore the life and mysteries of the man who invented the continental drift theory, Alfred Wegener. Before we begin, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could support the Obscure Minds channel with a like and subscription to motivate us to create more high-quality content in the future. Now let's step into the story of... I still remember the first time I held Wegener's The Origin of Continents and Oceans in my hands. The pages were brittle, the ink faded, but the ideas inside burned brightly. To understand why this book matters, we need to go back to Berlin in 1880, where Alfred Wegener was born. Wegener was the youngest child in a family of clergy. His father, a theologian, taught him patience and faith. But from a young age, Alfred was captivated by grander things: the sky, the wind, and questions without answers. At 18, he enrolled at the University of Berlin, then studied at Heidelberg and Innsbruck, diving into physics, meteorology, and astronomy. In 1904, at age 24, he earned a PhD in astronomy from Humboldt University. But astronomy wasn't where his heart lay. Alfred loved meteorology, the science of weather, of invisible air currents that steer the planet. In 1906, he and his brother Kurt set a world record, flying a hot air balloon for 52 continuous hours, collecting data on polar air. It wasn't just a flight, it was a declaration from a man willing to risk everything to understand the Earth. In 1911, while teaching at the University of Marburg, he wrote Thermodynamics of the Atmosphere, a book that became a classic in meteorology. But the turning point came in 1910 when he glanced at a world map. He noticed that the coasts of Africa and South America matched eerily well. He wrote in his diary, "Could the continents have once been joined? Could they move?" On January 6, 1912, at a conference in Frankfurt, Wegener presented a bold idea. The continents are not fixed, they drift. He named the ancient supercontinent Pangea, meaning all Earth. He provided evidence: fossils, identical plant and animal species in South America and Africa, like the Glossopteris tree or Mesosaurus reptile. Geology, mountain ranges in South Africa matched those in Argentina. Climate, glacial traces in India and fossilized tropical forests in the Arctic suggested continents were once in different positions. In 1915, he published The Origin of Continents and Oceans, asserting that about 300 million years ago, Pangea broke apart, and the continents drifted to their current positions. This book wasn't just a theory, it was a challenge to the entire scientific world. Wegener wasn't just talking about the past, he was predicting the Earth's future. But was the world ready to listen? I used to believe science was a place of justice, where truth always prevailed. But Wegener's story taught me that truth sometimes has to wait in the dark. When Wegener presented his continental drift theory, he faced ridicule. The greatest scientists of his time, like Harold Jeffreys, called his idea absurd. They asked, how could a continent weighing billions of tons drift? What force could move it? Wegener didn't have a complete answer. He suggested continents floated on molten rock below, but he couldn't explain the exact mechanism. The scientific limitations of the time were partly to blame. In 1912, we didn't know about mantle convection or the ancient magnetism of the ocean floor. But what breaks my heart more is the attitude of the scientific community. They didn't just doubt, they mocked. An American geologist, Rollin Chamberlain, wrote, If we believe Wegener, we must forget everything we know about the Earth. Wegener wasn't one to give up. He married Elsa Köppen, daughter of the renowned meteorologist Vladimir Köppen, and pressed on with his research. But the pressure grew. He was denied many teaching positions because of his outlandish theory. It wasn't until 1924 that he was appointed a professor at the University of Graz, Austria, with a modest salary. The climax of his tragedy came during his Greenland expeditions. Wegener led 4 expeditions, 1906, 1912, 1929, 1930, to study polar climate and gather more evidence for his theory. The final one, in 1930, was his undoing. He led a team to build a weather station at IJsselmeer, Greenland, to measure climate data. In October 1930, as the brutal winter set in, the IJsselmeer station ran out of food. Wegener, though 50 years old, decided to personally deliver supplies from the coast. On November 1st, his 50th birthday, he set out with a companion, Rasmus Wilhelmsen. They never returned. Wegener's body was found the following spring, buried under the ice. He likely died of exhaustion or a blizzard. Wilhelmsen was never found. In his coat pocket, they found a notebook with his final words, "I believe the truth will prevail, even if I'm no longer here." I can't help but wonder, what drove Wegener to that point? Was it the pain of a man rejected by the world, or the fierce belief that truth, though buried, would find its way to the light? Wegener didn't live to see his theory vindicated. But as he once wrote, truth has a way of finding its path. In 1947, scientist Maurice Ewing discovered mid-ocean ridges, where the Earth's crust is constantly forming. In the early 1950s, Harry Hess and Victor Vacquier used magnetometers to detect symmetrical magnetic stripes on the ocean floor, proving that continents move due to convection in the mantle below. By the late 1960s, the theory of plate tectonics emerged, directly building on Wegener's ideas. Today, we know continents move a few centimeters each year, creating mountains, earthquakes, and oceans. Every earthquake you hear about on the news, every mountain you admire, they all stem from Wegener's vision. But what haunts me is this: why did it take 30 years for the world to recognize him? Wegener's name now graces the Alfred Wegener Institute for Polar and Marine Research in Germany, a crater on the Moon, and an asteroid. But is that enough to make up for the years he was ridiculed? Imagine this: if Wegener had lived another 20 years, would he have seen the day his theory transformed science? Would he have smiled, knowing every map, every earthquake forecast carries his mark? And more importantly, are we today overlooking other geniuses, doubted simply because they're ahead of their time? Alfred Wegener was more than a scientist. He was a dreamer, a man who dared to believe the Earth isn't still, but alive, moving. He sacrificed everything, his career, his reputation, and ultimately his life, to defend the truth. But what have we, the inheritors of his legacy, done to remember him? Every time you look at a world map, remember that those outlines aren't just borders. They're the story of a man who saw the truth before the world did. And every time you hear of an earthquake or a new mountain, think of Wegener, who died in the frozen wilderness so we could understand this planet. I'm not here to judge. I just want to ask, are we missing other Alfred Wegeners in our time? What ideas are being buried simply because they're too bold? What do you think? Please leave a comment, share Wegener's story, and join us in spreading these untold tales. Thank you for joining Obscure Minds. If you found this story worth sharing, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to catch our next videos. Let's keep exploring the forgotten geniuses and keep the flame of science burning. See you in the next video.